You Can Be As Scattered As You Like, by Gwyn Page. There was a holy light shining out in the gap beneath Aziraphale's bedroom door. This was, in of itself, not alarming. Aziraphale had a habit of excluding light without meaning to. Usually when he was eating particularly good sashimi, or getting spectacularly drunk and watching Sunset Boulevard for the 200th time. Crowley was used to it, and after all, it wasn't a problem. Sometimes it would happen when they were out in public, and then it might get a bit embarrassing if the humans started to stare. Humans were pretty inept at actually seeing the light, but they could sense something was weird about Aziraphale. Like maybe his smile was a little too wide, or there was a strange glow to his skin. Here, though, in the privacy of Aziraphale's rooms, above the bookshop, letting out some holy light wouldn't normally be anything to be concerned about. Everyone needs to let loose once in a while, after all. Except, well, Crowley thought as he hovered awkwardly outside of Aziraphale's door. That's quite a lot of holy light, isn't it? Crowley wasn't entirely sure what effect holy light would have on him in large doses, but he wasn't keen on finding out on a cloudless, mild Sunday afternoon in the middle of August. It was too nice of a day to get discorporated inside, and besides, he had dinner plans. He hesitated for another moment, and then rapped his knuckles on the door. "Aziraphale, you almost ready to go?" The voice that came through the door wasn't muffled, as a voice coming through a wooden door should be muffled. It also echoed strangely, as though in a building with obnoxiously high ceilings. "Just another moment, my dear," it said. "I'm still putting myself together." Crowley squinted at the door. "Is that a figure of speech?" "In this case, I don't believe it is, Crowley, no." "You all right in there?" Yes, perfectly all right. I'll be just a few more minutes." There was a pause, and then, "Why don't you come in? Nothing you haven't seen before, after all." There was a sound which could have been a laugh, but it sounded more like the clanging of bells. Crowley shifted his feet and eyed the gap under the door again. "I don't think I should, Angel. It's been a while since I bore witness to, could be dangerous to my, occultness." The voice tutted, which oddly enough sounded like ordinary tutting. "Really, Crowley, have some some trust in me. Would I even offer it if I thought it could possibly hurt you in the slightest?" "I suppose not." "Good, that's settled. Oh, did you bring the champagne? I want to chill it for a bit before we head over to the restaurant." Crowley snapped his fingers, and the champagne bottle that he'd forgotten at his flat appears in his hand. "Present and accounted for." "Bring it in, my dear. Don't be shy." Crowley tried not to feel too much like a fresh-faced protagonist from an adventure novel as he slowly opened the door and peeked inside. For a moment the light was blinding, but in an ordinary way, as though he was stepping out of a dark room into a direct sunlight. It wasn't painful, and as his eyes adjusted, Crowley saw that he was staring at an Argyle-patterned wallpaper on Aziraphale's bedroom wall. It was a style that Aziraphale picked up on in the early 20th century, and to Crowley's dismay, he had obstinately refused to let it stay there. Steeling himself, Crowley opened the door the rest of the way and entered the room. Plenty of literature, mosaics, pottery, graffiti, paintings, poetry, lithographs, films, stained glass windows, and, on one occasion, a burnt cheese sandwich, have sought to depict such visions of angels as for the benefit of human perception. Most of them haven't even come close. Humans can hardly be blamed for this, because angels exist far beyond a mere 3 dimensions, and as any resident of Flatland will tell you, working beyond your own dimension as an artist is pretty bloody difficult. Those who have come close are still way off, but in the way that a caricature is way off. The basic elements are there, and you can sort of look at it and say, why yes, I suppose that does look a bit like a funhouse mirror version of Madonna. Funnily enough, the cheese sandwich has gotten the closest, but it was tossed out by its maker before anyone could get a good look at it. If someone had bothered to look at the burnt pattern on the cheese sandwich, they would have seen something a little bit like what Crowley saw when he entered Aziraphale's bedroom. Try to imagine that you spent your entire life believing that a very unflattering caricature of Madonna was what Madonna actually looked like, and then one day you see the real Madonna walk by on the street. It would be, to say the least, a lot to take in. Even Crowley, who was used to seeing in more than 3 dimensions, and moreover understood how angels' forms behaved, had trouble parsing Aziraphale as he saw him, standing in front of an ornate mirror on the far side of the large, if cluttered, bedroom. Well, standing was hardly the word for it. In order to stand, one must have legs, and perhaps feet to balance on. At the moment Aziraphale had no legs or feet to speak of. There was a suggestion of arms, or at least hands. There was definitely a torso, or something to which all other parts were centrally attached, or at least clustered around. Every piece of Aziraphale sort of hovered for a moment, as though tied together into a singular space by sheer force of will, or maybe by sheer loyalty to their host. There were several spinning rings which resembled halos, and one actual halo which framed Aziraphale's upper half in a glowing white spiked circle. There were many, many wings, and innumerable eyes. The eyes and wings in particular were ubiquitous. Crowley could see them in every dimension he knew of, in sizes varying from dewdrop to an ocean. There were a couple of mouths thrown in for variety, but those were mostly situated in the third dimension, and of an average size for a human, though the teeth they contained were decidedly inhuman. It was difficult to tell what color, or colours, Aziraphale was. He seemed to be all of them at once, within the rainbow and without, shifting and changing at every moment. And of course there was that too bright, holy light, which was sort of a rich golden color, and in of itself was not terribly interesting. This description, of course, is as inaccurate and unhelpful as most others, but it's a start at least. If you want something more concrete, take it up with the cheese sandwich. Crowley had seen angels in their true forms before, but it had been a while, and he had to let his being adjust to seeing Aziraphale like this, all at once. The mirror Aziraphale was looking into, though really at the moment he was looking everywhere, was having just as much trouble reflecting back an angelic visage, and had instead decided to dye its surface as black as ink and pretended it wasn't home. This had put Aziraphale out of it, and he said to it, in a voice which belonged to more than one mouth, "Oh, bother you, then." Crowley, quite relieved by the fact that he had not been discorporated, held up the bottle for Aziraphale to see. Again, a pointless action, but some habits are hard to break. "Where do you want it, Angel?" he said. Aziraphale's visible eyes swung around to look at Crowley with excitement. It was only mildly horrifying. "Ah, lovely! The ice bucket is on the armchair in the corner. There's the dear." Aziraphale waved a couple hundred wings in its vague direction. "Oh, what kind is it?" Crowley stuck the bottle in the ice bucket and turned the label out. "A Veuve Clicquot rose. Should go well with a heavy dinner." "Marvellous!" Aziraphale's whole being glowed even brighter for a moment, before he resumed fussing with the mirror. "Oh, come off it, silly old thing. It's only an angel." But the mirror remained obstinately dark. "Why do you need a mirror in that form, anyway?" Crowley said, scooting the bucket to the side and draping himself over the armchair. "It's not like you're supposed to look a certain way, in a form like that. There's a reason vanity's our business, Angel." Aziraphale gave off a grayish air that might have translated to a pout. "I have standards, Crowley," he said. "Just because heaven isn't checking up on me any more, doesn't mean I can just let this form go." Crowley raised an eyebrow. "Go?" "You know how it is. One minute you're tip-top shape, fighting alongside heaven's armies, getting regular fencing practice. The next you've been on Earth 6,000 years, and barely remember to transform once a millennia to put fear of the Almighty into some poor chap." "I wouldn't know," Crowley said, not unkindly. "Oh, I suppose not," Aziraphale said, embarrassed. "I do apologize, Crowley." Crowley waved it off. "Anyway, I don't know what you're so worried about. I think you look fine." Fine, in this case, meant terrifying and beautiful, as most angelic forms are, but in a particular kind of way that is unique to you, Aziraphale, which I, Crowley, think is altogether wonderful and perhaps a little dashing, considering that your eyes are one of your best features, and there are quite a lot of them at the moment. But Crowley didn't really have the gumption to elaborate. Aziraphale's ring spun anxiously. "It's just that, well, lately I've been feeling a bit scattered." He paused. "In the literal sense. All those pesky wings keep flying off of you?" Aziraphale cast a sideways look at him, which would have been subtle if not for the fact that subtlety, and true angelic forms, go together about as well as water and angry cats. "They're just not as well behaved as they used to be, I think," Aziraphale said. "I don't know. It's a bit silly, but I just feel less coherent." That wasn't quite the right word, and both of them knew it, but simultaneously they both understood what Aziraphale meant. So it was apples and pears, really. Crowley's eyes narrowed behind his glasses, which he didn't want to take off because of the light. "You don't think that has anything to do with—" He waved his hands in a gesture which meant something like, "You know, the business of us tricking yours and mine, and how yours might be catching on, and even if they haven't yet, you're still not exactly the model angel, haven't been for a while now, and I hate to say it, but maybe it's slowly catching up on you." Aziraphale had gotten the gist of this, at least. "I don't think so," he said carefully. "I think I would be able to tell if I was falling. This just feels, how did that Englishman put it in those charming fantasy novels of his? Like butter spread over too much bread. I do believe that's how I feel, Crowley." "If it helps," Crowley said. "You don't look any different from the last time I saw you." "How long ago was that now?" Crowley had to think about that one. He remembered, very distinctly, a chance meeting they'd had, long before they stopped pretending not to be friends, before the arrangement was even a twinkle in Crowley's slitted eye. He snapped his fingers at Aziraphale. "Bethlehem, 452 A.D." Aziraphale's eyes stared at him. Many of them blinked. "You remember the date?" "Course I do. I got a great memory. Besides, you know the saying about the devil being in the details." "Yes, but you didn't make that one up, Crowley. I believe the humans can be blamed for that one. It certainly wasn't my lot." "But who do you think they were talking about, Angel?" Crowley said with a cocky grin. Aziraphale did not look amused. All 5 of his mouths were pursed. Crowley cleared his throat. "Anyway, Bethlehem, you were, as you say, putting the fear of the Almighty into some poor chap, and I was busy tempting some rabbis." This was really only a lie by omission, as Crowley had been tempting them to join in a local bar for a game of dice because he was horribly bored, rather than with any of his usual sins, as he was supposed to be doing. "Well, I turned the street corner, leaving the unmoved rabbis behind in a huff, and there you were, in some filthy back alleyway showing off to some unfortunate unbeliever."